Knowledge is powerful, but it is never enough on its own. We live in a world where information is everywhere. You can search for anything within seconds. You can know about success strategies, read about leadership, or watch tutorials on how to build a business or master a skill. Yet, despite having this endless supply of knowledge, so many people still feel stuck. Why? Because dreams don't grow from what you know. They grow from what you do with what you know. Think about it. Every dream starts as an idea. It lives in your mind. You imagine yourself achieving something greater, building something meaningful, living with purpose. But if that dream stays only in your head, if it is never tested in the real world, it eventually fades. That's why so many people say, I used to dream of becoming, but never I became. The difference between the two is action. When you stop at knowing, your dream begins to vanish slowly. It disappears not because it was impossible, but because you never gave it the chance to breathe. Knowledge is like a seed. A seed has potential, but until you plant it, water it, and nurture it, it remains just a seed. The same is true for knowledge. It needs action to transform into reality. The truth is, knowledge without action creates an illusion. It makes you feel as if you are making progress because you are learning. You attend seminars, watch motivational videos, read books, and maybe even take notes. But unless you take the risk of acting on what you know, you are standing still. Action is what turns clarity into results, and it is what keeps your dream alive. Every person who ever achieved greatness was not the one who knew the most. They were the one who applied the most. Application requires courage. It requires facing failure, rejection, and uncertainty, and that's where most people stop, because it feels safer to know than to do. But safety kills dreams. The moment you settle for knowing without doing, you trade growth for comfort. The world doesn't reward what you know. It rewards what you create, what you build, what you contribute. Dreams demand movement. They demand that you step out of theory and into practice. If you truly want to see your dreams alive, you must be willing to cross the bridge from knowing to doing and from doing to becoming. So don't stop at knowing, act, test, fail, learn, and then act again. Because every time you act, your dream grows stronger. And every time you only know, your dream begins to fade. Your future depends not on what you know today, but on what you are willing to do with it tomorrow. 5 keynotes of the speech: knowledge alone does not sustain dreams. Action is what gives them life. A dream fades when it remains only in the mind and is never tested in reality. Knowledge is like a seed. It must be planted and nurtured through action. Growth requires stepping beyond the safety of knowing into the courage of doing. The world rewards applied knowledge, not stored knowledge. Knowledge alone does not sustain dreams. Action is what gives them life. This truth is often underestimated because knowledge feels like progress. When we learn something new, when we read a book or listen to a lecture, we feel smarter, more prepared, even inspired. That sense of inspiration creates an illusion of advancement, as if the act of knowing has already moved us closer to our dream. But the reality is, knowledge is only the first step. It is potential energy waiting to be converted into motion. Dreams cannot be nourished by potential alone. They thrive only when potential is transformed into action. Without that transformation, they remain fragile ideas that wither over time. Consider the countless people who dream of writing a book. Many of them study writing techniques, attend workshops, read about storytelling, and even research publishing. They know a great deal about writing, sometimes more than successful authors. Yet their dream remains unwritten. Why? Because their knowledge has not crossed the threshold into action. Their ideas sit in notebooks, their outlines rest in drawers, and their stories remain locked in their minds. Despite all they know, their dream quietly fades. Meanwhile, another person with less knowledge, but more courage to sit down each day and write, completes the book. This illustrates the simple but powerful principle: knowledge without action is wasted potential, while action, even imperfect, gives life to a dream. The same is true in business, careers, relationships, or personal goals. A person may know all the strategies for starting a business, may study market trends, financial models, and management systems. They may even design the perfect plan. But if they never take the leap of launching, if they never test their ideas in the real marketplace, the business never exists. Their dream becomes nothing more than theory, a set of ideas admired on paper, but never lived out in reality. The danger here is subtle. Knowledge becomes a comfort zone. It feels safe to keep learning, planning, and preparing while avoiding the risks of action. Yet dreams are not born in safety. They are born in motion. Dreams demand courage because action is never without uncertainty. The moment you move from knowing to doing, you expose yourself to the possibility of failure. That is why so many people hesitate. They wait for perfect knowledge before acting, believing that once they know everything, they will be ready. But that day never comes. There is no such thing as perfect knowledge because every action teaches something new that cannot be learned from books or lectures alone. Action reveals lessons that knowledge alone cannot provide. The paradox is that the more you act, the more you truly know, and the closer you move toward your dream. Think of knowledge as a map. A map shows you the terrain, the routes, and the possibilities. But having the map does not mean you have traveled. You can study the map all day long, memorize every detail, and imagine the journey. But unless you take the first step, the destination will never be reached. Action is the walking, the climbing, the moving forward. It is messy, uncertain, sometimes exhausting, but it is the only way to experience the reality of the dream. The map guides you, but the journey is made by your steps. Another important truth is that action fuels motivation in a way knowledge never can. Knowing something may inspire you briefly, but doing something creates momentum. For example, someone who knows everything about fitness but never exercises will not see results. Yet the person who begins with a small step, like a daily walk or a simple workout, feels progress and gains energy to do more. This cycle of action and progress keeps the dream alive. Knowledge provides direction, but action provides proof. Proof strengthens belief, and belief keeps the dream burning. Dreams are fragile when they exist only in the mind. They are vulnerable to doubt, procrastination, and the distractions of daily life. But once action is taken, even small action, they begin to solidify. They take form in the real world, moving from imagination to reality. Each action is like oxygen to a flame. It keeps the fire of the dream alive. Without it, the flame dims, no matter how much knowledge surrounds it. So when we say knowledge alone does not sustain dreams, it is a reminder that knowing must always be followed by doing. Dreams disappear in stillness but thrive in motion. They are nourished not by what we understand, but by what we are willing to practice. Knowledge may show us what is possible, but only action transforms possibility into reality. Dreams are not kept alive by the mind that knows, but by the hands and heart that act. A dream fades when it remains only in the mind and is never tested in reality. At first, the dream feels exciting, almost alive. It gives you energy, makes you imagine a future filled with possibility, and even brings you moments of happiness just by thinking about it. But as time passes, if that dream is never acted upon, it slowly begins to lose its power. What once felt vibrant and inspiring starts to feel distant and unrealistic. The human mind can only carry a dream for so long without evidence of progress. When no steps are taken to bring it into the real world, the dream eventually fades away like smoke, leaving behind regret and a sense of loss. The mind is a powerful place where imagination thrives. Every innovation, every invention, every breakthrough that has shaped our world started in someone's mind as an idea. But ideas are not enough. For every dream that becomes reality, there are thousands that vanish simply because no action was taken. A dream is like a vision waiting to be tested against the challenges of reality. Until it is tested, it remains fragile. It cannot survive forever as a thought. Thoughts change with moods, with circumstances, with distractions. Action, however, anchors a dream and gives it form in the physical world. When a dream stays only in the mind, it often grows into something intimidating. We start to imagine it in such perfect detail that it feels overwhelming to pursue. Instead of taking a step toward it, we begin to doubt ourselves. We tell ourselves that the timing is not right, that we are not ready, or that we will start when conditions improve. But those conditions never really align perfectly, and as the waiting continues, the dream quietly fades. It is not that the dream was impossible. It is that it was never given a chance to breathe outside the imagination. Testing a dream in reality does not mean achieving it all at once. It means taking the smallest possible action to see how it works in practice. A musician who dreams of performing does not need a grand stage at first. They need only to play in front of a few people. An entrepreneur who dreams of building a company does not need to start with a massive investment. They can begin with a simple product or service. These small tests are like sparks. They keep the dream alive by showing that it is possible. Without these sparks, the dream remains locked in the imagination, and imagination alone cannot sustain it. What makes this principle so powerful is that action, even in its smallest form, creates feedback. It tells us what works and what doesn't. It reveals challenges we could never have predicted while only thinking. When you act, you learn in a way that pure knowledge cannot provide. This learning keeps the dream growing, evolving, and adapting. But when no action is taken, the dream remains stuck in its original, untouched form. Over time, the mind grows tired of carrying a dream that never sees daylight. It feels like a weight, and eventually you let it go. Think about children and how naturally they test their dreams. A child who dreams of building a tower with blocks doesn't just imagine it. They start stacking, experimenting, failing, and rebuilding. Their dream of a tower stays alive because they are constantly acting on it. But as adults, we often lose that instinct. We spend too much time imagining and too little time experimenting. The longer we wait, the weaker the dream becomes, until one day it is nothing more than a memory of something we once wanted. Another danger of keeping a dream only in the mind is that it can become confused with fantasy. A fantasy is something we enjoy imagining but never truly intend to pursue. A dream, however, carries responsibility. It asks us to move, to change, to risk failure. If we never test our dream, it becomes easy to blur the line between the two. We may convince ourselves that we are satisfied just thinking about it, but deep inside, a part of us knows that something valuable is slipping away. That quiet dissatisfaction often turns into regret later in life when we realize how much time was lost. Testing a dream, even imperfectly, prevents it from fading. It doesn't matter if the first attempt fails. What matters is that the dream has entered reality. Failure is not the death of a dream. In fact, it often gives it more clarity and strength. The real death of a dream happens in silence and stillness, in the endless postponement of action. That is why even small actions are powerful. They give the dream air to breathe, fuel to grow, and proof that it is more than just imagination. When you think of all the great achievements throughout history, none of them survived only as thoughts. They were tested, refined, and brought to life through action. Every dreamer who made an impact understood this, that imagination is the spark, but testing is the fire. Without the fire, the spark dies out. And when it dies, it leaves behind only the ashes of what could have been. Knowledge is like a seed. It must be planted and nurtured through action. A seed on its own holds incredible potential. Inside it lies the possibility of a tree, a forest, or a harvest that can feed countless people. Yet, if the seed is never planted, it will never grow. It can sit on a shelf for years, full of hidden power, but unused and unrealized. Knowledge works in the same way. You can gather information, memorize concepts, study theories, and even feel proud of how much you know. But until that knowledge is planted into real-world application, it remains dormant. Dreams wither when knowledge is stored but never used, because potential, no matter how great, cannot sustain itself without action. When you plant a seed, you commit to the process of growth. You place it in soil, you water it, you expose it to sunlight, and you protect it from harm. Growth is not instant. It takes patience and consistent care. The same is true for knowledge. Acting on what you know does not guarantee immediate results, but it sets into motion the gradual development of your dream. Just as a seed breaks open and transforms into something new when planted, knowledge comes alive when applied. It stops being abstract information and becomes lived experience. That transformation is what keeps dreams alive. Many people make the mistake of treating knowledge as the final step rather than the beginning. They collect degrees, attend seminars, and read countless books, believing that accumulation alone will bring change. But knowledge kept inside is like seeds stored in a jar. It never fulfills its purpose. Action is the soil in which knowledge must be placed. Without that soil, knowledge dries up, and with it, the dream attached to it begins to fade. The greatest ideas in the world remain invisible if no one dares to plant them. Planting also involves risk. When you bury a seed in the ground, you are trusting that something will grow, even though you cannot see it immediately. The same is true with knowledge. Applying what you know requires faith that the effort will lead somewhere, even if the outcome is uncertain. That risk often holds people back. They prefer to keep their knowledge safe, untested, because testing might expose failure. But what they don't realize is that an unplanted seed is already a wasted seed. Avoiding risk does not preserve a dream. It kills it slowly by never allowing it to take shape. Nurturing is another part of the process. A planted seed cannot be ignored. It must be cared for consistently. Dreams also demand nurturing. You cannot act once and expect everything to fall into place. You must keep showing up, keep applying what you know, keep refining your approach. This steady effort is what strengthens the dream. Each action is like water and sunlight. It feeds the growth. Each lesson learned from mistakes is like fertilizer. It makes the roots stronger. Without nurturing, even the best seed will fail to grow. Just as knowledge without consistent application fails to sustain a dream. Think of the innovators and leaders who have changed the world. They were not necessarily the ones who knew the most. They were the ones who planted what they knew and nurtured it with relentless effort. Thomas Edison did not just know about electricity. He tested his knowledge thousands of times until the light bulb became a reality. Writers do not succeed by knowing grammar rules alone. They succeed by writing every day, revising, and publishing. Entrepreneurs do not succeed by knowing business theory. They succeed by launching, failing, learning, and trying again. In each case, knowledge was the seed, but action and persistence were the soil, the water, and the sunlight. It is also important to realize that not every seed grows in the same way or at the same pace. Some sprout quickly, others take years before they show signs of life. Similarly, not every application of knowledge leads to immediate success. Sometimes the first attempt fails, sometimes progress is slow. But that does not mean the dream is impossible. Just as a farmer does not abandon the field because the seed takes time, you must not abandon your dream because results do not appear instantly. Growth is often invisible before it becomes visible. Roots grow underground before the plant breaks through the surface. Action works the same way. It builds invisible progress before visible results appear. Knowledge also multiplies when applied, just like seeds multiply when planted. One seed can grow into a tree that produces hundreds of new seeds. In the same way, applying knowledge leads to new insights, new skills, and new opportunities that would never have been discovered otherwise. A person who takes action creates momentum, and that momentum generates more growth than they could have imagined at the start. By contrast, someone who holds on knowledge without applying it keeps everything small, contained, and stagnant. In the end, knowledge without action is wasted potential. It has the power to create, to transform, to inspire, but only if planted and nurtured. Dreams demand that you take the knowledge you hold, no matter how small, and put it into practice. They demand that you take the risk of planting it in the soil of reality, water it with consistent effort, and trust the process of growth. Only then does knowledge fulfill its purpose. Only then do dreams come alive and stand tall like trees that began as nothing more than seeds in the palm of your hand. Growth requires stepping beyond the safety of knowing into the courage of doing. Safety feels comfortable, and comfort is tempting. It gives us the illusion that as long as we keep learning, planning, and preparing, we are making progress. But growth never happens in the comfort zone. Growth lives in the space where fear exists, where risk is unavoidable, and where failure is possible. It is in those moments, when you step outside the safety of knowledge and into the uncertainty of action, that you discover your true capacity. Dreams cannot grow in the mind alone because the mind prefers security. They grow when you challenge that security and choose courage over comfort. Knowing something creates a sense of control. You can study all the steps, understand all the details, and feel prepared, but action introduces variables that cannot be predicted. The moment you move from theory into reality, you face resistance. You face criticism, setbacks, and challenges that were invisible in your plans. That is why many people choose to stay in the safety of knowing. It feels less threatening. But the irony is that safety slowly suffocates dreams. When you avoid the courage to act, you avoid the possibility of growth, and without growth, your dreams begin to shrink until they disappear. Think of someone who dreams of learning to swim. They can read every book on swimming, watch endless tutorials, and memorize every stroke. In theory, they know exactly what to do. But as long as they never step into the water, they will never swim. The pool looks intimidating, the thought of sinking feels terrifying, and the uncertainty keeps them on the edge. Only when they finally gather the courage to jump in does their knowledge transform into skill. The water, though uncomfortable at first, becomes the very space where growth happens. The safety of knowing remains dry, but it produces no swimmers. The same principle applies to any dream. A person may know how to start a business, but the courage lies in launching it despite uncertainty. A person may know how to speak in public, but the courage lies in stepping onto the stage. A person may know how to pursue a passion, but the courage lies in doing it despite fear of judgment. Growth comes not from the knowledge itself, but from the experience of applying it. Every time you step beyond safety, you stretch yourself. And every time you stretch yourself, you grow stronger, wiser, and closer to your dream. The fear of failure often disguises itself as preparation. People tell themselves they are not ready yet, that they need to learn more, research more, or wait for the perfect moment. But in truth, they are hiding behind knowledge to avoid action. The perfect moment does not exist, and complete readiness never comes. Growth demands that you act before you feel ready. Courage means moving forward with uncertainty, trusting that you will figure things out along the way. In doing so, you discover strengths and abilities you would never have uncovered in the safety of knowing. Failure, though feared, is one of the greatest teachers of growth. Each time you act and stumble, you gain insights that no book or lecture could ever provide. These insights shape your next steps, refine your approach, and ultimately push you closer to success. Failure is not the end of a dream. In many ways, it is the fuel that strengthens it. But you can never experience the lessons of failure if you never step into action. Remaining in the comfort of knowing keeps you safe from mistakes, but it also keeps you safe from growth. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear. Everyone feels afraid when stepping into the unknown. The difference between those who grow and those who remain stuck is that one chooses to act while the other chooses to retreat. Courage does not guarantee success on the first attempt, but it guarantees growth on every attempt. And with each attempt, the dream grows stronger, more resilient, and more achievable. Life rewards those who move, not those who stand still. Dreams respond to courage because courage is action in its purest form. It is saying, I may fail, but I will try. It is choosing to test your knowledge, to step into unfamiliar territory, and to keep moving even when results are uncertain. The more you practice courage, the more natural it becomes. What once felt terrifying becomes manageable, and what once felt impossible becomes possible. Growth accumulates through repeated acts of courage, each one pushing the boundaries of what you thought you were capable of. Staying in the safety of knowing can feel secure, but it is a false security. It keeps you stuck in theory while life moves forward without you. Dreams cannot survive there. They require you to plant your feet on uncertain ground, to risk mistakes, and to embrace discomfort. Only then do you expand, learn, and move closer to the life you imagine. Growth is the reward for courage, and courage is the bridge between knowing and becoming. The world rewards applied knowledge, not stored knowledge. Having information is valuable, but it only becomes powerful when it is used to create something meaningful, solve a problem, or make an impact. Knowledge sitting unused in the mind is like wealth locked away in a vault. It may appear impressive, but it does nothing to improve life. The people who shape the world are not necessarily the ones who know the most. They're the ones who act on what they know. They take the same principles others have read about and transform them into products, services, movements, and innovations that touch lives. Dreams survive and flourish only when knowledge is translated into application, because that is what creates visible change. When you apply knowledge, you cross a bridge from theory into reality. Reality is where results live, and results are what the world responds to. A person who reads endlessly about leadership but never steps up to lead will not be remembered as a leader. A person who studies health and fitness but never changes their habits will not enjoy the benefits of well-being. A person who dreams of building something but never takes the first step will never see their dream come alive. Applied knowledge is the currency that buys progress, while stored knowledge is like currency that never enters circulation. It remains unused, unnoticed, and ineffective. The world has always celebrated doers more than thinkers alone. Thinkers provide vision, but doers bring that vision into existence. History remembers inventors, creators, and leaders because they dared to use what they knew. The Wright brothers did not have the most advanced scientific knowledge of their time. There were others who understood aerodynamics more deeply. But the Wright brothers applied what they knew, experimented with it, failed repeatedly, and finally achieved flight. The world rewarded their applied knowledge by remembering them as pioneers. This is the difference between stored knowledge and applied knowledge. One remains invisible, the other changes history. Applied knowledge also carries the weight of accountability. When you act on what you know, you expose yourself to feedback from reality. You learn whether your idea works, whether your strategy holds up, or whether your plan needs adjusting. This accountability can feel uncomfortable, which is why many prefer to keep their knowledge private, safe from scrutiny. But it is precisely that accountability that turns knowledge into growth. Without testing it, knowledge stays flat. With application, it becomes dynamic, adaptable, and capable of producing outcomes that move you forward. One of the greatest illusions of the modern world is mistaking information for progress. We live in a time where knowledge is easier to access than ever before. Anyone can look up strategies, watch tutorials, or read success stories. But access to information does not equal transformation. Transformation only happens when knowledge is applied consistently in action. The person who studies motivation but does nothing remains unmotivated. The person who studies wealth creation but never takes financial steps remains broke. The world does not pay you for what you know in theory. It pays you for what you produce with that knowledge. Dreams are especially vulnerable when knowledge is stored but not applied. At first, simply learning about your dream can feel exciting. Reading about entrepreneurship, watching others succeed, or imagining your own journey can give you a rush of inspiration. But over time, without action, that inspiration fades. The dream becomes stale because it lacks evidence of progress. Applied knowledge, however, feeds the dream with proof. Every small step forward shows that the dream is possible. Every experiment, even when imperfect, creates momentum. The more you apply, the stronger the dream grows, and the more the world responds to your efforts. Another truth is that applied knowledge compounds over time. Just as money grows when invested, knowledge grows when used. Each time you apply it, you gain new insights, refine your skills, and create better outcomes. These results, in turn, open doors to new opportunities. Applied knowledge has a multiplying effect because action generates experience, and experience deepens understanding in ways no book ever can. Stored knowledge, on the other hand, remains stagnant. It gathers dust in your mind, impressive perhaps in conversation, but powerless in practice. The world also rewards applied knowledge with trust and influence. People are drawn to those who act, not those who only speak. A teacher who demonstrates their subject through real-life examples earns respect. A leader who practices what they preach inspires loyalty. A creator who shares their work, however imperfect, builds an audience. Action creates credibility. People do not follow knowledge alone. They follow evidence of application. That evidence is what convinces others that you are not just a dreamer, but a doer, not just a learner, but a contributor. Applied knowledge often requires sacrifice, effort, and persistence, which is why not everyone chooses it. It is easier to stay in the realm of knowing because knowing feels safe. But safety does not reward you. The world rewards contribution, progress, and results, all of which come only from application. That is why some of the most successful individuals in any field are not necessarily the ones with the highest degrees or the deepest theoretical understanding. They are the ones who took action on what they knew, adjusted through failure, and built something tangible. In the end, knowledge that is stored benefits only the individual, and even then, only as long as it remains in memory. Knowledge that is applied benefits both the individual and the world around them. It creates value, inspires others, and shapes the future. That is why dreams disappear when knowledge is never acted upon. Stored knowledge may make you feel prepared, but it is applied knowledge that builds the bridge between dreaming and achieving. The world sees, values, and rewards what you do, not what you know. Dreams are never lost because of lack of knowledge. They are lost because knowledge is left untouched. Knowing gives us vision, but it is doing that gives us life. A dream that stays only in the mind is like a seed that is never planted. It holds promise but never produces fruit. Action is what transforms that promise into reality. It requires courage, patience, and a willingness to face failure, but it is the only path that leads from imagination to achievement. Growth comes not from safety, but from stepping into uncertainty and daring to test what we know. The world does not measure us by how much we have learned, but by how much we have contributed, created, and built with what we know. So if you truly want your dreams to live, do not stop at knowing. Move, act, risk, and apply. Because every step forward, no matter how small, keeps your dream alive. And in the end, it is action, not knowledge, that shapes both your destiny and the world you leave behind.